If you thought there were a lot of remakes these days, wait till you check out this list. So we'll start off with an obvious one. Scarface in 1983, starring Al Pacino as Tony in 1980's Miami. A determined Cuban immigrant takes over a drug cartel and succumbs to greed. Directed by Brian De Palma. This 1932 film is about an ambitious and nearly insane violent gangster as he climbs the ladder of success in the mob, but weaknesses prove to be his downfall. Directed by Howard Hawks and starring Paul Mooney. The 1988 comedy directed by Frank Oz, starring Steve Martin and Michael Caine as two conmen who try to settle their rivalry by betting on who can swindle a young American heiress out of $50,000 first. Which is a remake of Bedtime Stories with Marlon Brando and David Niven from 1964. Also, this film was remade recently with Anne Hathaway and Rebel Wilson. Then there's everyone's favourite remake from 1982, John Carpenter's The Thing with Kurt Russell. A research team in Antarctica is hunted by a shape-shifting alien that assumes the appearance of its victims. Which is a remake of The Thing from Another World from 1951, directed by Howard Hawks. Scientists and American Air Force officials fend off a bloodthirsty alien organism while at a remote Arctic outpost. And we got Three Fugitives with Nick Nolte and Martin Short as a reformed bank robber is taken hostage by a desperate man during a bank hold-up, but is forced to go on the run with his captor while they're both mistakenly thought to be in cahoots. Which is a remake of The Fugitives, a 1986 French comedy. Jean is taken hostage at a bank robbery by a foolish bank robber. As Jean left prison an hour earlier, the police assume he's the robber. Everything goes comically wrong. The robber's little daughter joins the fugitive. Both films directed by Francis Ferber. David Cronenberg's The Fly from 1986. A brilliant but eccentric scientist transforms into a giant man-fly hybrid after one of his experiments goes horribly wrong. With Jeff Goldblum and Geena Davis. That would be a remake of The Fly from 1958 with Vincent Price. A scientist has a horrific accent when he tries to use his newly invented teleportation device. In 1989, we get Neil Jordan's We're No Angels. The two fugitives pass themselves off as priests in a hope of evading capture and passing a police blockade at the border with Canada, with Robert De Niro, Sean Penn, and Demi Moore. Which is a remake of the Michael Curtis 1955 We're No Angel, which had Humphrey Bogart and Peter Ustinov. Three Devil's Island escapees hide out in a house of a kindly merchant and repay his kindness by helping him and his family out of several crises. In 1987, Leonard Nimoy directed Three Men and a Baby, where Jack Holden and his friends Peter and Michael spend most of their time having flings with several women in their apartment. Their life changes when a mysterious baby appears at their doorstep, with Tom Selleck, Steve Guttenberg and Ted Danson. Which is a remake of Three Men and a Cradle from 1985, a French film where Jacques, Pierre and Michel are three adult friends who enjoy a single life until they find themselves stuck with a baby. Chuck Russell directs the 1988 The Blob. A deadly entity from a space crash lands near a small town and begins consuming everyone in its path. Panic ensues as a shady government scientist tries to contain the horrific creature. Which is a remake of the 1958 The Blob, starring a young Steve McQueen. As an alien life form consumes everything in its path, it grows and it grows. The 1986 Richard Benjamin directed The Money Pit, where a young couple struggles to repair a hopelessly dilapidated house, which has Tom Hanks and Shelley Long. Which is a remake of the 1948 film Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House. A man and his wife decide they can afford to have a house in the country built to their specifications. It's a lot more trouble than they think. In 1987's No Way Out, a cover-up and witch hunt occur after a politician accidentally kills his mistress, starring Kevin Costner, Gene Hackman and Sean Young. Which is a remake of the 1948 The Big Clock. A magazine tycoon commits a murder and pins it on an innocent man, who then tries to solve the murder himself. In 1987, John G. Albertson directs Happy New Year. Nick and Charlie are two crooks that rob Harry Winston's jewelry store. Nick portrays a rich elderly brother and sister by using prosthetics and makeup to con the manager, which is a remake of the 1973 film Happy New Year. Released from prison apparently under a New Year amnesty, a criminal tries to pick up the threads of a life changed not only by his daring plan to rob a jewelry store in out-of-season Cannes, but also by a very special someone he met there. In 1986, down and out in Beverly Hills, a rich but troubled family find their lives altered by the arrival of a vagrant who tries to drown himself in their swimming pool, with Nick Nolte, Bette Midler and Richard Dreyfuss. This is a remake of the 1932 Voodoo Saved from Drowning. A bookseller saves a tramp from drowning and shelters him, but the tramp's odd behaviour starts to wear everyone down. 1980's Three's Breathless has Richard Gere when Jesse LeJac steals a car in Las Vegas and drives down to LA. His criminal ways only escalate, but when will it end? This would be a remake of the 1960 Breathless by Jean-Luc Godard, a small-town crook hunted by the authorities for a car theft and the murder of a police officer attempts to persuade a hip American journalism student to run away with him to Italy. Brewster's Millions from 1985, directed by Walter Hill and starring Richard Pryor, is the umpteenth remake of the film, where a minor league baseball player must spend $30 million in 30 days in order to inherit $300 million, but he's not allowed to own any assets, destroy the money, gift it, give it to charity, or tell anyone else about the deal. Where the original film, Brewster's Millions, is a 1914 comedy directed by Cecil B. DeMille and starring Edward Aberles and Joseph Singleton. Cat People is the 1982 Paul Schrader film with Natasha Kinski and Malcolm McDowell as a woman who is orphaned from a young age finally reunites with her older brother. Matters start to go awry when she slowly discovers the true nature of her family. This would be a remake of the 1942 Cat People, as an American who marries a Serbian immigrant who fears that she will turn into a cat person of our homeland's fables if they are intimate together. Joel Schumacher's 1989 film Cousins is about two couples who go to a mutual friend's wedding and end up swapping partners, with Ted Danson, Isabella Rossellini and Sean Young. Whereas the 1975 Cousine, two distant cousins meet at a wedding banquet for an elderly couple. Over time, a close friendship develops between them, but their spouses begin to think they are more than just friends. DOA from 1988 is about a college professor's day. His top student allegedly commits suicide, his wife presents him with the divorce papers, and he overnights in a freshman girl's dorm. The next day, more murders around him. Will he find the killer in time? And the 1949 film is where Frank Bigelow, told he's been poisoned and only has a few days to live, tries to find out who killed him and why, with Edmund O'Brien and Pamela Britton. The Toy is a 1982 comedy by Richard Donner about an unemployed reporter who finds himself literally purchased as a toy for a spoiled rich brat, with Richard Pryor and Jackie Gleason. The 1976 The Toy by Francis Ferber, as a poor journalist finds himself as a toy of his boss's son. Making friends with a naughty child, he tries to save him from the cruel power of his father. Sally Field, James Caan and Jeff Bridges star in 1982's Kiss Me Goodbye. The ghost of a dead husband haunts his wife when she moves back to their house in New York City. She's about to marry an Egyptologist there. This would be a remake of the 1976 film Donna Fleur and Her Two Husbands. When Fleur marries Terador, the owner of the drugstore, Flo is happy with the new husband but misses the love life with her previous husband. One day, the ghost of her late husband comes back to pursue her. 1980's The Jazz Singer has the son of a Jewish cantor defy the traditions of his religious father in order to pursue his dreams of being a popular singer, with Neil Diamond and Laurence Olivier. Despite having many remakes, the original 1927 The Jazz Singer, with Al Johnson, is about the son of a Jewish cantor who must defy the traditions of his religious father in order to pursue his dream of becoming a jazz singer. In 1981, Billy Wilder directed Buddy Buddy with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. During a high-profile mafia testimony case in California's Riverside County, a hired killer checks into a hotel room near the courthouse, while his depressed next-door neighbor wants to commit suicide over a marital problem. Whereas 1973's A Pain in the Ass, Milan must kill Louis Randoni before he testifies in the court of law. He is disturbed by his depressed roommate Francois, who commits suicide by hanging himself from a toilet pipe flooding Milan's room. Here's where his problems really begin. In 80's Battle Beyond the Stars is about a farm boy who recruits a band of outlaws to save the planet Akea from forces that threaten to wipe them out from the face of the universe. A battling stretching beyond the stars begins here. Which is based on The Magnificent Seven from 1960 by John Sturges. 7 gunfighters are hired by Mexican peasants to liberate their village from oppressive bandits. Which in turn is a remake of The Seven Samurai from 1954. 1988 Switching Channels with Kathleen Turner, Burt Reynolds and Christopher Reeve about a television news chief courts his anchorwoman ex-wife with an 11th hour story. Which is half remake of the 1940s Howard Hawks film His Girl Friday with Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell. A newspaper editor uses every trick in the book to keep his ace reporter ex-wife from remarrying. And also 1931's The Front Page, where a crusading newspaper editor tricks his retiring star reporter into covering one last case. Canon Films presents a Tobe Hooper film. 1986 Invaders from Mars. A boy tries to stop aliens who have taken over his town and attempting to brainwash its inhabitants. A remake of the 1953 Invaders from Mars. A young boy learns that space aliens are taking over the minds of Earthlings. (1980s) Little Miss Marker has Walter Matthau as a gruff book. His life is turned upside down when he gets a 6-year-old kid as collateral for a bet. Also starring Julie Andrews and Tony Curtis. Whereas the 1934 Little Miss Marker, a bookie Sorrowfell Jones received a little girl as an IOU. Spielberg's 1989 Always. The spirit of a recently deceased expert pilot mentors a new pilot while watching him fall in love with the girlfriend that he left behind. And is a remake of the 1943 film A Guy Named Joe. A dead World War II bomber pilot, Peter, becomes a guardian angel to another pilot. He guides Ted to the battle of helping him romance his old girlfriend, despite her excessive devotion to Sandbridge's memory. Frank Oz directs Little Shop of Horrors in 1986 about a nerdy florist who finds his chance for success and romance with the help of a giant man-eating plant who demands to be fed. Which is a remake of the Roger Corman 1960s A Little Shop of Horrors. A clumsy young man working at an impoverished flower shop discovers a strange plant he has been nurturing has an insatiable appetite for blood, forcing him to kill to feed it. The 1983 Blake Edwards film with Burt Reynolds. A womanizing sculptor named David goes to seek help from the psychiatrist Mariana to cure him of his obsession with women. Which itself is a remake of the Francois Truffaut The Man Who Loved Love. Bertrand's burial is attended by all the women the 40-year-old engineer loved. We flash back to Bertrand's life and love affairs told by himself while writing an autobiographical novel. 1988's Moon Over Parador. A US actor gets a gig in South American Parador. Where the dictator dies, he's forced to play him for real and gets his mistress. Can they change Parador? Which is a remake of the 1939 The Magnificent Fraud. In this lively programmer, a con man hires a character actor to masquerade as the recently assassinated director of a tiny Latin American country so he can bilk an arriving American ambassador out of his fortune. 1987's Dead of Winter. A fledgling actress is lured to a remote mansion for a screen test, soon discovering she is actually a prisoner in the middle of a blackmail plot. Remake of My Name is Julia Ross from 1945. Julia Ross secures employment through a rather nosy employment agency with a wealthy widow, Mrs. Hughes, and goes to live at her house. 2 days later, she awakens in a different house, in different clothes, and with a new identity. You're told she is the daughter-in-law of Mrs. Hughes and has suffered a nervous breakdown. 1984's Against All Odds. A gangster hires an ex-football player to find his girlfriend. When he finds her, they fall in love, and the twists start to appear. This would be a remake of Out of the Past from 1947, where a private eye escapes his past to run a gas station in a small town, but his past catches up with him. Now he must return to the big city world of danger, corruption, double crosses, and duplicitous games. Gene Wilder directs The Woman in Red from 1984. On his way to work, Teddy spots Charlotte, an incredible, beautiful woman in red. He really wants to meet her, but what would his wife say? Which is a remake of the 1976 Pardon Mon Affair. As loyal as a dove, a family man is about to tell his first lie to his wife when he falls for an enchanting woman in a billowy red dress. With a bit of help, he just might get what he wishes for. However, is love always a bed of roses? Dwight H. Little directs The Phantom of the Opera in 1989 with Robert Englund. A young soprano becomes the obsession of a horribly disfigured composer who has plans for those who oppose him or the young singer. Which is a remake of the 1925 The Phantom of the Opera. A mad, disfigured composer seeks love with a lovely young opera singer, starring Lon Chaney. "1985 has The Man with One Red Shoe as Tom Hanks, as a man picked randomly out of a crowd is made the target of a CIA surveillance and pursuit. Which is a remake of The Tall Blonde Man with One Black Shoe from 1978. A hapless orchestra player becomes an unwitting pawn of rival factions with the French Secret Service, and he is chosen as a decoy by being identified as a super secret agent. Mel Brooks stars in this 1983 To Be or Not to Be. At the onset of World War II, a Polish actor's family and the Polish resistance help a troop of theatre escape Poland and the invading Nazis. Which is a remake of the 1942 To Be or Not to Be with Carol Lombard and Jack Benny. During the German occupation of Poland, an acting troupe becomes embroiled in a Polish soldier's efforts to track down a German spy. The 1984 Unfaithfully Yours has Dudley Moore as a composer who suspects his wife of cheating and plots to kill her and frame her lover. Whereas the 1948 Unfaithfully Yours, Rex Harrison stars as a man who dreams of revenge when he suspects his wife is unfaithful. Blake Edwards directs the 1982 Victor Victoria. A struggling female soprano in 1934 Paris finally finds work after posing as a female impersonator, but it complicates her personal life when a visiting Chicago gangster finds himself attracted to the seemingly male performer. Is a remake of Victor and Victoria from 1933. Aspiring singer Suzanne takes over for ham actor Victor at a small cabaret in Berlin, where he works as a woman impersonator, and perchance she is discovered by an agent who thinks she really is a man. She becomes famous, but her situation becomes troublesome when she falls in love with Robert. 1984's Where the Boys Are. 4 college co-eds travel to Fort Lauderdale for the Easter week of spring break and become involved in a series of adventures and misadventures. Where in 1960, Where the Boys Are has 4 very different college girls drive to Fort Lauderdale, Florida for spring break and seek out various adventures and romances for themselves. 1983's The Wicked Lady, directed by Michael Winner, has Faye Dunaway as a woman who gets bored and turns to highway robbery for thrills. Whereas the 1945 The Wicked Lady has a noble woman begins to lead a dangerous double life in order to alleviate her boredom. "1984's Oxford Blues has Rob Lowe as an American hustler pursues the girl of his dreams to Oxford, where he must enroll to obtain her. Based upon the 1938 A Yank at Oxford, where a brash young American aristocrat attending Oxford University gets the chance to prove himself and win the heart of his antagonist's sister. Thanks for watching. Hopefully there's some there that you didn't know about. If I missed any, let me know in the comments.